Miguel is actually part of Kidspace. And so before we get started on actually discussing the animals that you guys are going to see right now, wanted to see how you are, Miguel, and what's up with Kidspace.
I'm doing pretty good. Just here working through another day taking care of the elephant collection while we're closed, as you know, because of the pandemic. But during this downtime, even though we're closed, we're still doing, content, reaching out, collaborating with you and other people. So having fun, actually trying to making the best out of a sticky situation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for my friends who have not been in Kidspace yet, because they will after this, what is Kidspace?
Kidspace is a children's museum. We're a very hands-on museum. Before the closure, we basically just had a lot of kid-driven activities, very hands-on learning. And we always just wanted to develop the full potential of all kids that came here, no matter, what age. Normally, you know, 2 to 7 years is our average, but we do get kids that are older.
That's really great. That's really great. So I know that we are here. All my friends, actually, I can see a lot of my friends right now on the screen. Can anyone raise their hand if they have a lizard or they have a snake? Anyone? Cool. Awesome. Awesome. Very cool. So yeah, the good thing is we're actually on Zoom platform today, so I can actually see some of our friends. A lot of times we use a program called GoToWebinar, where we won't see you guys in the same way. So it's really cool to see actually some of our participants. So let's get started then, Miguel. So I know that we, Miss Izzy's actually going to pull up a really cool PowerPoint so we can better understand the animals that we're going to be visiting with today.
That's right. And as some of you may not know, but there are, thousands of lizard and snake species out in the world. And today, just for the amount of time we have here today, I'm going to introduce you to 3 species of reptiles, 2 lizards, 1 snake. One's going to kind of throw a curveball at you. And so I'll be using our animal ambassadors here at Kidspace. And sometimes people ask, what is an animal ambassador? It's essentially an animal whose role is to interact with the public in support of our institutional education and conservation goals. So that's why we have an animal collection here to teach kids about, animals in general and conservation, empathy towards animals, how to proper care for these animals. We keep a lot of species that are common in the pet trade. So we're always happy to help kids and families help them through setting up their first pet or help with a current pet they might have. All right, so we're going to start off with Leonard.
Yay!
Leonard is our leopard gecko. He's a little dull right now because he's going to shed, but here he is. You can see him okay.
Awesome. So can you tell us some more about Leonard?
Yeah. And if we follow along the PowerPoint, you guys could see, I'll just touch basic facts on the leopard gecko. So if we go to the next slide. So everyone always says, what's a gecko? Is a gecko a lizard? And yes, a gecko is actually a type of lizard. It's just a general term just to refer to other groups of similar species. A little difference with geckos is unlike, say, like the Western fence lizards and stuff that we commonly see in our yards, they have like real scaly skin, versus these guys have real kind of soft, smooth, and just with a few bumps. It's more frail, if you want to talk, it's more delicate. It could kind of tear easy. It's not as tough as some of the other lizard species. And what a lot of geckos could do is some geckos can actually climb surfaces like glass and walls because they have specialized toe pads. Leonard is unique because he doesn't have that. He's a terrestrial gecko where he is not very good climber. If you just look at his feet, they just kind of look like regular toes. He doesn't have the sticky pads. He's also different than other gecko species because he actually has eyelids. He actually could blink. If I can see if I can make him blink. Most geckos have a clear spectacle, and some of you guys who do may even have one, like a crested gecko. They use their tongue, and that's how they lick their eye, and that's how they clean their eye. But see, he could actually physically blink. He's got external ear holes, like typical lizards do. He's got a nice thick tail, which is where most leopard geckos keep their extra fat in their body. So it's a good indication of health when you see a nice thick tail on a leopard gecko. Means he's nice and healthy. He's a little dull today. Like I said, he's going to go into a shed. So he's usually a nice brighter yellow, but He's a little drab today because he's going to go into a sheds pretty soon. So let's go to the next slide. People always ask where he's from. You know, they're found throughout Iran, Afghanistan, Western India, and Pakistan. They're very much a desert species. So they like it dry. They don't really do well in moist environments. They need some humidity, but not much. Let's see. And then people normally ask like what they eat. So I think that is our next slide, I believe. Oh, no, sorry. So how big do they get? They get about total from the snout to the end of the tail, they get about 7 to 10 inches. So in the male, and about how long do they live? They live about 10 to 20 years in captivity. Females live 5 to 10. People think it's because since they lay usually a lot of eggs, it takes a toll on their total lifespan. So the males tend to live a little longer.
Wow.
Leonard here is a boy though, male. And in the wild, they eat various insects and arthropods that are out there. They're also known to eat, you know, scorpions, centipedes, small, you know, rodents, nestling rodents, pinky mice, and so forth. Here at Kidspace, though, we give them a variety of stuff. We give them crickets, superworms, mealworms, and the occasional frozen thawed pinky mouse. So his diet is pretty simple. And then how does he protect himself? That's a good question. And as you see in the picture, we have a leopard gecko who dropped its tail. It's called, the correct name is called tail autonomy, which is meaning the ability to drop your tail. They do this to protect themselves. So say if I was a predator and I was grabbing him, what he would do is he would wiggle his tail really fast and then drop it, as you see in the PowerPoint pic right there. And he could actually break it off at any point. He doesn't have to break it from here. He could break it off whatever point he wants to. And then as it's wiggling, he could just go ahead and kind of just run away while the predator's busy, you know, going after this wiggly tail that just dropped. In captivity, it happens, but in captivity, it happens because you either startled it or you were rough handling and like it jumped out of your hand and you grabbed the tail and oops, it popped off. So as you would see, like the proper handling of geckos is kind of like this, just because he's terrestrial, he's not a typical gecko that has the sticky feet. You do want to support his body and make him have 4 feet on the ground so he doesn't panic. But he's used to being handled.
Awesome. So before we meet Baldwin, can we get I want to get a close up. So once Miss Izzy stops sharing her screen, we can actually check him out. Look at Leonard, you guys. So cool. So I'm sorry, did you say how old Leonard was?
He's about 10 years old. He's been here for about 10 years. Wasn't sure of his age. He was here before I started, but the note said he was pretty much, he was a decent size when he came to us. So but he's been here 10 years. So he's probably 10, maybe to 12. But
And
he's
how do you
enjoying his life
acquire,
here at Kidspace.
how do you acquire your animal at Kidspace?
Currently, we acquire them from accredited sources like specialized pet stores that sell exotic animals or breeders that we know. In the past, they have taken in animals that have been relinquished. A lot of these were relinquished to Kidspace by previous owners. So we decided to keep, they decided to keep them as ambassador animals to teach. But just for in general, just for the
Wow,
safety of the collection, we tend to get them from sources that are trusted. So we don't introduce anything into the collection.
got it. And for people that are interested in having an animal like this, what would you find are the challenges for having a gecko?
The challenges with any reptile in particular is just getting your proper setup. The husbandry, which is the proper way to feed and house an animal, is varies from species to species. But his is pretty simple. Him being a more nocturnal species, he doesn't need the Vita light or the full spectrum lights that like bearded dragons them have. He would just require a small tank, 5 to 10 gallons. Would be enough for his whole lifetime. But temperature, he would need belly heat, so like a heat pad with a thermostat. You just don't want to put in a heat pad there because you could actually burn him because it'll get too hot. A thermostat will keep it to the proper range, which is about, he likes it, he likes it about 85 in his height spot. And then the rest of the spot is cool, so he could thermoregulate, because I didn't touch on that, but reptiles being cold-blooded, they can't produce their own heat, so they have to thermoregulate. So they'll warm up and get to an optimum temperature, then they'll just move throughout their enclosure to maintain the proper temperature they want. Kind of like we do. When it's hot, we go inside or we sweat, but they don't sweat.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the challenges of any exotic animal is just the setup. And what I always recommend people is like do your research first on the animal. Ask people like me or anyone in the where you're getting it from, and just saying, hey, show me what I need to get to keep them, and then consider housing it. But if you're limited on space, these guys are a good option. They don't require much space.
Well, I have a lot of friends in the chat here, which I really appreciate you guys. You guys can throw your questions in the chat since we're using Zoom. Um, and you had said, what exactly is the lifespan again? Because I have a few of my friends who are asking that question.
Oh, it's an average of like 10 to 20, and that's for a male. Female is probably 10 years old, is probably on the old, you know, but it's a, I guess I should explain, it's like a bell curve. So when we say 10 to 20, it's like the top of the curve. Some live longer, some live shorter. It just depends on the individual animal and the proper care that you give it over its life.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Very exciting. Very cool. So who do we have next, Miguel? I know Miss
Ne-
Izzy's gonna throw up our next PowerPoint.
yeah, next we're going to show
Oh,
you one of our snakes we have here at Kidspace, which his name is Baldwin, our ball python. I'll bring him right up.
awesome.
Here, buddy. Come here, big guy. And here is Baldwin, our African ball
Wow.
python.
Very cool.
So I'll briefly touch base on them. I'm gonna try to, move through this because I know I could tell by the chats people are throwing up a bunch of questions. So I'll try to get through this, and then so I could try to answer as many questions as I can at the end.
Yeah, and if you want to put Baldwin down for a minute to add to do the thing, we can always show him right after as well if it's easier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. So Baldwin is an African ball python. So by his name, he is from Africa, but they're located geographically around Western and Central Africa. They're found in common areas like forest areas or grasslands, but you won't find them normally out in the open. They're an ambush predator that likes to stay in burrows or old termite mounds, which there's a lot of in Africa. So that's where you normally would find them. Normally, you would rarely come across one out in the open. They're usually hidden somewhere. They like to be very reclusive. So next slide. So I'll give you some more info. Then common question, people think since the word python is in his name, he gets, 10, 15 feet long. No, he's the smallest species of python in that area. So they only average 3 to 5 feet long. And he's about 17, we're guessing. And he's only just barely like 3.5 feet, so he's, they don't really get that big. Females normally get larger. So they'll be normally the ones that are in the 5 foot range. Males generally, they average 3 to 3.5 feet. And then people always ask, how long do they live? They live, about 10 years, in the wild, and 25 to 30 in captivity. But they can live longer, like I said, the bell curve. And what do they eat? In the wild, he eats a lot of the native rodents, primarily really common. You might even hear this. They like African sophers. It's a type of rat they have. And they also like jerboas. They kind of look like a kangaroo rat, if you guys are familiar with it, but it's a little different if you see them. And then some might say they might take a bird that falls if they happen to take advantage of it, but they're rodent eating species. And then here we feed them. We don't feed live here. You might see a lot of videos online of people feeding live. We don't feed live. We leave frozen thawed, and he eats small to medium sized rats, depending on what's available.
Wow.
So how does he survive? Yeah, that's a good question. What makes these guys popular is that they're not prone to biting. They can bite. I have seen a few that do try to, but their main defense is to, it's in their name. They ball up, so they tuck their head in and they roll up into a ball. And actually, the ones that are super scared, I mean, the ball is so tight that you could literally roll them as if they were in that tight ball. Here, Baldwin won't ball up because he's been so habituated to people that he just kind of cruises around. But the reason they do that is they're willing to take bites to the body to hope that they survive and protect their head.
Wow. That's so cool. Baldwin seems really interesting. So can we check him out again?
Yeah, let's check him out. Here he is, our handsome boy.
Yeah. Look at that, you guys. So how many snakes do you guys have at Kidspace?
Let's see, we have the African ball python, we have coastal rosy boa, we have a Puebloan milk snake, and a California king snake. So that makes what,
Someone's
four?
asking specifically, how old is Baldwin again?
We're guessing he's about, based on when we got him, and which he was here before came here. He's about 17 years old.
Wow. And where did he come from, Miguel?
He actually came from an owner who I guess visited the museum a lot, who no longer care for him properly, and he was relinquished to Kidspace over 10 years ago.
Wow. It's amazing. So for someone interested in adopting this snake, what would they need, Miguel?
To keep one, you would need, they don't need very big enclosures. Maybe for a full grown snake like this, a 30-gallon tank would be good if you're going to keep them in the tank. They need hide spots though. They're very they're ambush critters. They like to hide. You probably he's not. They're usually not ones that you see out and about. They're going to be hiding 90% of the time unless they're hungry and they pop out. So you need hides. You need the same thing. You need. They like belly heat. So I always use like a heat pad with a thermostat. If you do get him a huge cage, if you want to, he probably won't use it. But you could also put I like those ceramic bulbs that don't give off any heat, but they emit heat but no light. So those are always good. They kind of raise the ambient temperature so it doesn't get too cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to be okay feeding rodents. Whether it be depending on how young you get them, you might have to feed young like hopper mice. And then as they get bigger, small to medium rats like him, he could take a medium rat easy. But we try to keep him, his weight under control. So we feed him about either one rat every 2 weeks just to keep him on a maintenance diet. And they're
Got
very
it.
mellow, they're very calm. The key is just your setup. Like I said, your husbandry's got to kind of just be. It's not complicated, but as long as you have it set up right, they pretty much they do well in captivity.
Awesome. And I have someone asking, how good is his eyesight?
You know what? They surprisingly they have okay eyesight, but they don't really have acute vision. More of the tree snakes have better vision. He sees movement real well, but if I could show you, I don't know if it'll come out on camera. If you could see these heat pits that are like on his lip, he's like these pink little pits on his lip, upper lip. I don't know if you see
Wow,
them.
yeah. Yeah.
So those are heat pits. Those are most common in pythons. Some tree boas have them too. Pit vipers have one pit behind their nostril. They pick up thermal heat. Like think of the predator, that thermal vision that they have. And it's pretty good for about 3 feet out. And so when they smell something with their tongue and they smell like it's prey, they use these heat pits to hone in on it. And then once it's close enough, then they strike.
Wow, that's so cool. Um, does he swallow the rats whole? Someone asked.
Yes. Unlike lizard snakes, have flexible jaws. They don't, there's a common myth that they unhinge their jaws. No. The difference is like, I'll just use my example of, like our lower jaw, it meets here what we call the chin. Theirs doesn't. Theirs is just two bones, and then they have ligaments there. So it allows it to stretch out. And on the top jaw, it has an extra bone separating it from the skull, which allows it to open up and stretch out wide. But they don't unhinge, they don't dislocate anything. They just have really flexible jaws or jaw bones.
Wow, that's so interesting. Is he very heavy?
Yeah, he's after you hold him like this for a while, yeah, he's 6 pounds, so he is heavy. After you hold him like this for a while, like try to hold 5 pounds like this for a while, like you said, but no, but he's not like as far as snakes
Get a
goes.
workout.
Yeah. So, but as far as snakes goes, no. I mean, Burmese pythons and reticulated pythons, they get like 80 to 120 pounds. I mean, they could get really big. That's really huge. He's very manageable.
Would you say someone's asking, are they solitary? So are they solitary
Yes.
creatures? They are,
Yeah.
right?
They only come together for mating, for breeding. I've seen people cohabitate, but usually one ends up doing poor because they tend to stress each other out. Like the bigger one, because usually one outgrows the other one. They don't grow similarly, and they
Mhm.
stress each other out, and then they compete for space and so forth. But yeah, they usually like if you go out in the wild, you would find one ball python per termite mound. You wouldn't find they
Wow.
don't den up or anything like that.
Wow. So they have their own personal space and they kind of know when everyone else is sort of in their own space as well, right? That's
Yeah, and they know instinctually when it's breeding time in the wild, and then that's the only time they really go out and they, the male will seek out a female.
got it. That's really, really cool. What are the python's predators, Miguel?
Well, in Africa, take your pick. There's so
Yeah,
many other,
yeah,
you
true.
know, there's so many carnivorous, cats and canids there that they get them. Depending on their size, birds will get them too. Birds of prey, they'll get them too. Certain monitors, like the Savannah monitor, will take them also if they're big enough.
Wow.
So, yep. So they're, Africa's kind of survival of the fittest out there. If you guys see those videos, you got the king of the jungle out there too, the lion from there too. I'm sure they would probably eat one if they found one, but they normally go after big prey.
So Miguel, you seem really comfortable with a python. Do you have any of your own?
Yes, I've actually have been keeping reptiles for almost 40 years now. I started at the age of 8. I get my first ball python I got in 1988, and currently I have because we've learned over the years of keeping them, they're polymorphic, which means they come in various color morphs. I have various ones now, and I have about 23 of them
Wow.
because I'm breeding, and I've always bred and kept, and I use it to kind of pay for my hobby.
Absolutely. Well, then it works that you work where you work, right?
Yeah, and then before that, I was in the veterinary field for 23 years, so I've always worked, and we were in exotic animal practice, so I always got, I got to learn a lot from what they get medically, not just husbandry wise, so I got to see both sides.
Absolutely. That's really cool. Well, okay, so that's really exciting. So I know we're going to meet our final guest. So Miguel, I want you to keep our final guest till the end of the PowerPoint because it's a surprise and
Mhm.
want everyone to see it. Um, but I know Miss Izzy's gonna shoot up the next exciting one. Who is this?
This is our European legless lizard, Legolas. And yes, you heard correctly, a legless lizard.
Wait,
He's actually the one that,
Legless Lizard.
yep, legless lizard. He's mistaken for a snake because he's got no legs, obviously. But when I show you, when I bring him out, you'll be able to see the differences. He could blink just like Leonard can. He has eyelids. He has external ear openings. He's got a short, fleshy tongue. And he also doesn't, I'll show you the long groove that he has along the side of his body, similar to, if you're familiar with alligator lizards. And they use that for to move their, to compress their body. They could either flatten it or extend it, and they'll either flatten it or extend it depending if they're, eating full, trying to squeeze into something narrow. A female who's pregnant or gravid is what we call it. She'll expand so she could, expand as her eggs grow within her. And or when they heavy breathe, they'll do that. They'll open and compress, especially if they need to, if they're upset or they want to puff up with air. They also will blow up. He might do that when I bring him out. You'll see he'll blow out because he's a big bluffer. And then where are they from? Yes, we have about 5 species of legless lizard here in California. They're really small. I think one of the slides will actually kind of show a pic of one. But the one we have, Legolas, they're commonly found in southeastern Europe and Central Asia. And then how long do they live and how big do they get? That's a very common question. They don't get very big, actually. Well, compared to the ours, yes, they get a huge. They get about 2 to 3 feet in length. And our current one, he's about 2 feet 9 inches long. But in the wild, we don't really know how long they live. In captivity, they live about 20 years. So that's the basics of their husbandry and their longevity, natural history. What does he eat? That's always a great question. They eat a variety of arthropods and stuff in the wild. They'll eat. They're known to eat because of belly contents. They'll eat small mammals. They'll eat like pinky mice or rats, maybe even the small fledgling bird that falls out of a tree. Here at Kidspace, we feed them same thing like Leonard. We feed them crickets, superworms, mealworms, and occasionally he likes small mice. He likes hopper to pinky mice, frozen thawed, of course, but he likes to eat those too. So we like to offer a variety. And then how does he survive? Similar to what we demonstrated with Leonard earlier. This is actually a good pick of a, looks, this one is, I believe, a California legless lizard. These you will hardly find. You'd have to actually be sifting around certain areas that you might find one. But they do the same thing. They could break their tail. And since and these legless lizards, usually more than half their body is tail, they could break at any point, and it's usually what they use to escape when they're attacked by a predator, which is normally like a bird, hawk, similar to that. And what they do is they could, same thing, they drop their tail, it wiggles like crazy. And many of you guys who have ever tried to, there might be some of there out you, sorry, there's some of you out there that who have probably tried to catch a lizard and have caught it by mistake, and the tail will wiggle like crazy. It breaks off and it just wiggles, wiggles, wiggles. And that actually, since predators are really, they hone in on movement, they go for that wiggling tail, and it allows him to slink off while it's distracted, eating the tail.
That's so cool. So that's so exciting. You guys actually are going to get to see the legless lizard, right, Miguel?
Yes, I will bring them out right now.
Awesome. And I was actually reading all the questions that everyone's been.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm trying to kind of, I don't want to sound too rushed, but I kind of like to get to the questions because it's hard to address everything in the PowerPoint.
Yeah, of course.
And then, so here is our legless lizard, Legolas.
Whoa, look at that. He's beautiful. It's like gold.
Yeah, he's like an olive. He's kind of like a mood ring. Sometimes he'll be lighter, sometimes he's darker. Right now,
Interesting.
since he was I had him in his temporary container. He's a little
Yeah.
cool, so he'll darken up because he wants to absorb heat. So he's a little cool. He's not, he's fine. They just instinctively go darker because they want to absorb more heat.
Wow.
But as you can
That's
see, see his eyes. He has eyelids. He could, see if I get him to blink.
yeah.
And then you see the ear hole that's right behind here. And he
Yeah.
has very much a lizard face. Whoops, I'm sorry, buddy. I didn't mean to scare you. And being a terrestrial animal, see, he's a lizard with no legs. He's not the happiest when he's pulled off the ground. But so this, what you see here is normal. He's not, he's just telling me like, hey, put me down. And then I'll show you the lateral line that I was talking about. I don't know, see if it'll come out good on camera. All right, let me see if I can get him to show it. Does that come out okay? The line that's right there?
Yeah, look at that, you guys.
See that line?
Whoa, yeah, I can totally see
You
the
see how it
line.
expands and collapses? And then
Yeah.
I'm gonna slink him forward, and you're gonna see the line end at some point. See how now it's gone?
Yeah.
So this is where his body ends. The rest is now all tail. So
Wow.
watch, I'm gonna go forward and watch tail, 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 more tail, more tail, more tail. And eventually we'll finally get to the end of the tail. So see, he's more than half his body length is tail.
Wow, that's amazing. That is so cool. Are they really rare? Like if someone wants to find one, can they find one easy around
You know
here?
what? They've never really became popular in the pet trade. So you can find them though if you do search, but you would like to try to find a captive hatched one or bred one.
Mhm.
The wild caught ones are tougher to sometimes acclimate to captivity. They might get stuck on you might have to seek out slugs and snails because that's all he'll take. He may not take everything, but if you have their setup right and you just set them up similar to like a bearded dragon,
Mhm.
they do really well. But they do need a bigger cage because these guys they're a very active lizard. They're always roaming around looking, cruising. He'll dig underneath his substrate, he'll pop up. He's always looking for food, or he's just being active. So they appreciate a longer cage. Like his cage, I believe, is like 4 feet long, the one we have him in. And he would probably appreciate a longer one, but he does well in the 4-footer. And see this puffing up here?
Got
Like
it.
he doesn't have a triple
Yeah,
chin.
look at
Yeah. People go, wow, he's fat. Like, no, right now he's puffing up because he's bluffing. Right now he feels, I don't know what it is with some reptiles when you put them up to the camera. I don't know if it's the lens or the IR in it. Like they get intimidated by it. So he's bluffing at the camera. So he's puffing up, he's trying to look tough. So he's trying to bluff his way. And then he lunged, if you saw, he lunged at it once, like just trying to bop it away, just trying to like intimidate the camera. which is funny.
Yeah.
It's funny. Their senses, they perceive things differently than we do sometimes, and that's why sometimes I go, yeah. Sometimes they just notice something I didn't, and I've noticed doing a lot of these recently that the camera sets some of them off more than others. Like once I get them too close to the actual camera hole, like they go like it's almost like they think it's an eyeball, and they
Interesting.
act weird. It's weird. They react to it. I'm not really sure exactly what it is, but they do react to it. So see, right now
Where
again,
did this one come? Oh yeah.
this one was purchased from a reptile facility.
Awesome.
I think it was returned to them originally because you could kind of see his nose is kind of look kind of is a little blunted. You really can't see his nostril really well. It kind of looks like it's smushed like this because he was
Yeah.
kept unfortunately previously to us getting it in a low cage, and then what he would do is just rub and rub and rub and rub, and he just wore his nose down. So he needed
Got
some
it.
treatment, and now it kind of scarred in, and so he has a little bit of a deformed snout, but he's still cute.
Yeah.
And he's actually very a popular exhibit animal here at Kidspace because people go, "Oh, check out this active snake! This snake's always out." And we're like, "It's not a snake," and they're like, "What?" And
That's
as you can
funny.
see, and he's similar to a lizard. Like he can't swallow large prey items. He'll basically bite and chomp. They have pretty strong jaws because since they eat snails and stuff, they could crunch their shells. So
Yeah.
if he were to bite you, you'd feel it. It's not horrible, but it'd be like a now. He's never bitten me though.
Yeah.
He's bluffed. He's usually all bluff. He puffs up, he rolls. He hasn't done it yet, but he'll do like a croc roll. He
Do
might
you have venomous snakes at
no,
Kidspace?
no, venomous snakes are require special
No.
permitting. And then being a kids museum, it's just better to have
Mhm.
something that can interact with the public. We've tossed it back and forth,
Yes.
but just it's just better to have we also some people when people see you keeping venomous, people assume like it's easy and it's something like everyone should keep, and it's no, it's if you're gonna keep venomous, it's very much for the advanced keeper. Even I would feel comfortable keeping a rattlesnake if I had one, but I choose not to just because of danger potential. Just it's not worth the risk. There's so many other
Got
cool
it.
rep snakes out there that that I could teach and with I'd rather use like Baldwin, who's really mellow and big and handsome and doesn't really mind being petted and handled versus a venomous snake you couldn't do that with.
Yeah, definitely limits the amount of the way that the kids can actually appreciate them differently. Um, I have this question. Does it hurt when it breaks its tail?
Um, there's not a
What do you
lot of
think with
nerve.
that?
Well, I know they feel it because they can break it from whatever position they want, but I don't know how much residual pain there is because when people have on dead specimens that they found, they check them. There's not a lot of nerves transmitting to here, so it's not so the pain responses aren't probably as huge, but they know it broke off, and these guys can regenerate their tail. I want to clarify that people think all lizards can drop their tail. Not all lizards can drop their tail. Only certain species do.
Wow, that's
Like
so
say, like if
interesting.
you had if you had a bearded dragon, you would actually hurt him if you tried to pull its tail. You could, that you would injure, and that would hurt a bearded dragon because since they don't detach, they do have more pain receptors there.
Got it. And then someone else asked, do you have any thread snakes?
No, we don't have any threat snakes. We don't even have. I've caught actually a California legless lizard here once that an employee saw. They thought it was a little snake, but no, it turned out to be a legless lizard. We tried to keep him, and he did okay. He would eat once in a while, but he wasn't thriving. So I just opted to, instead of keeping him as an ambassador, I just let him go. And I'd rather use this guy who's bigger and not so and pretty outgoing once he chills out and doesn't get spooked by the camera.
Someone else asked, can snakes handle the sound of a loud roar or screams? So how do they react to sound like that?
Well, snakes in general, they can hear, but it's only a certain megahertz. It's kind of more like so they can't hear, from what I could tell, based on the hertz, they don't really hear high pitched. So I don't know if that would, but they feel vibration. So like more like say the frequency of like say bass, like if you're familiar with audio sound, the bass, you can even feel the resonance.
Yes.
They feel and hear that very well. Also, when you're walking, they could feel that too as you're approaching. That's why a lot of times you don't encounter a snake on a path because they felt you or even saw you coming before you got there.
That's so cool. So interesting. And this is the only legless lizard that you guys have, right?
Correct. Yeah. The
Very
other ones are too small and they're what we call fossorial, which is basically they act like earthworms. You know, they just like to be in the substrate hidden. So even
yeah.
if we had one and displayed it, you would never see it. All you would see was dirt.
God.
So he wouldn't be a good versus this guy's out and active all the time. It's easier to teach about legless lizards with him than it would our native species.
Someone's asking, which I know we answered, but we'll ask again. Why is it called a legless lizard?
Because he's a lizard with no legs, as you can see. Easy name, easy common name.
Yeah, it's very straightforward. It's really
And
cool.
and back in the olden, back in the day, some people still refer to them. We used to call them glass lizards because they were able to break their tail off in various segments. So, and they felt like they were
Yeah.
very frail, and so they were calling them glass lizards. So they were, but they're not glass. They don't break that easy. They could actually choose when they want to break. When they want to break their tail. See, if he was super freaked out, if this was a wild lizard, if he wanted to, and he felt threatened by me by just doing this, he could drop it from this point on. Like if I just gripped, but see, he doesn't mind. He doesn't appreciate being handled all that much, being lifted off, meaning that he has no legs, but
Yeah.
he tolerates it. I've worked with him, so he's comfortable with me holding him.
Got it. So yeah, so the key to these animals, right, Miguel, is that the more that you handle them and the more time you spend, the warmer they get to you, right? They become more comfortable with you.
Mhm.
Is that a part of like they become more socialized, correct?
Yes, and it also could be species dependent, and it could also be individuals. Like I have met, not a lot, but I've met a few ball pythons, believe it or not, that are not friendly. Like no matter every time you pick it up, it balls up, or if it chooses not to ball up, it'll try to bite. But it's the exception, not the rule. So it's very much an individual thing. Just like dogs, like you have dogs that are very outgoing, and you have dogs that are shy, and you have dogs that you just tell people, what, don't pet him because he doesn't like it. So they're very individual, and they're kind of like, if you want to call it personalities. But you're right. The more you do handle one and you handle it correctly and not roughly, the more they gain kind of like confidence in you and they become familiar with you. So then they don't feel threatened when you pick them up or
Got it.
defensive. Actually, a better way is to say defensive. They don't get defensive when you pick them up.
And
They're just that casual.
what would you say for this specific animal, or this legless lizard? What does someone need? Is there a certain thing that they would need or something specific to
Um,
their
yeah,
character?
a large enclosure, depending on what size you get them at. Um, a substrate that's not sand. Whoopsie, he tried to jump out. And so he could like burrow. There's a lot of cocoa based kind of like shredded aspen and or shredded cocoa that you could use it because they do like to burrow. Hide spaces, a basking spot because they do like to, like a regular lizard, they do like to come out and bask. I also always encourage belly heat too, especially in their hides. So in case they don't want to be out for whatever reason. He doesn't come out much when he sheds. When he sheds, I think he
Hmm.
feels very vulnerable. He doesn't come out much. So he'll just stay in his hide. So I make sure his hide has a heat mat with has a thermostat on it. So he could just chill out and go through his shed phase and come out when he's ready.
Got it. That's so cool. Yeah, all my friends have been asking some really great questions. So thanks.
Cool.
Let me I know Miss Izzy, we have
He
a
wants
few
to say
questions,
hi.
you guys. Look at him. He's right up close too.
Yeah, I think he's warming up to it. At first, he was pretty threatened by it. Now he's actually being, like, you notice he came out and did a lot of long tongue flicks. That's
Hmm.
actually good. When he's doing long tongue flicks, he's actually more comfortable. The short tongue flicks are telling me he's kind of nervous, but the long tongue flicks, he's curious. He wants to see what this is all about.
Wow, that looks so cool. That's such a great shot. That looks so good. Look at that, you guys. So cool.
But can
So
you tell my camera is constantly like kind of zooming, unzooming because he's moving, like he's
yeah,
bobbing? And I think that's what throws them off. I think it's that zoom, unzoom
the
that makes
movement of the
them, that kind of
readjustment.
intimidates them. Yeah, I think it freaks them out in the way. I think they perceive it differently than we do.
Yeah. I have a question. Is the lateral line where the belly scoots meet the regular scales?
They don't really have belly scoots like snakes do. They're just basically continuation of see, they're just scales.
Yeah.
They don't see, since they're not snakes, they don't have scoots like snakes do. And if you want, I could show you the difference real quick in between if you want to read it, because I
Yeah.
know people get confused by that. So take a look real quick, see the scalation, how it is,
Yeah.
and look at the pattern. It's pretty much the same, except it's just reduced here on the belly.
Yeah.
But see, it's scale. So they just have pretty much armored plating. That's what also makes them like lizards too. They don't have the belly scoots that snakes have. So I'll show you real quick, because that's a very good question. So see here on the snake, we see how you see the scales, the regular scales.
Yeah.
And then what I do here, see how they change.
Oh, wow.
See, these are the belly scoots.
Yeah.
And they use that because that's actually how they, along with the ribs, how they move around in certain, because they have different ways of undulating and getting through places. So that's why you get he likes to warm up on my arm all the time. He always wants to curl up.
Aw.
But see, like they're way different.
Yeah.
So see, like you see here, 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 and then you get to the belly scoots, which are here.
Yeah.
And
That's
what you see in the lizard doesn't have that.
got it. Very cool. That's a very cool thing to specify, so all you guys know now. I know Miss Izzy has a few poll questions we wanted you guys to answer for funsies. So I think she's gonna pull up first question now. Feel free to be a part of it and kind of answer the question the best you can. Once she pulls
Alrighty, guys. So here goes the very first poll. And it is, how many members are in the reptile family? So how many different species of reptile do you guys think there are? 1,000, 3,000, or 6,000?
I'm curious to see what people
6,000. I say 6,000.
Alrighty, guys. If you have an answer, go ahead and click on your poll.
Were you going to answer it? Ben? No?
think. Is that it, Miss Izzy?
Alrighty. So we are ending the poll now, guys. Oh, there we go. Alrighty, and it's kind of a mixed bag. We have a couple for 1,000, a couple for 3,000, and it looks like most people chose 6,000. So, Mr. Miguel, what's the answer?
6,000. Actually, depending on what you read, it's usually probably, I think, a little higher, but yeah, it's in the 6,000 range and higher.
You guys are also smart.
Oh,
Let's
cool.
go to poll number 2. So, true or false? All lizards can detach their tails.
What
do you think, Ben?
False.
I think so too.
Alrighty, we're gonna have another 5 seconds to let everybody finish up. And we're ending the poll. So what's the answer, Mr. Miguel?
No, not all lizards can detach their tails. Only certain species.
And also, Miguel, someone had asked how far, what was the question exactly? It was like, how long can they, like, the older they get, if they detach their tail, will they regenerate the tail back always, or is it only, up to a certain age?
No, they could regenerate their tail up until because every time they shed, another piece will kind of regenerate with it. The quickness will depend on the species and then how much tail length they lost, but it will never grow back the same. But it is not dependent because they're all kind of born with the equal, like they're always born with with their body and then a pretty decent tail for their size. And then as they grow, that tail gets longer and longer and longer. The body gets bigger, a little longer, but the tail is the one that really takes off. Because as you can see, as I demonstrated, how much his body is, not much of his his own composite. So like more than half his tail.
Got it.
Is there a point where the legless lizard can't regenerate its tail anymore?
It would depend on the injury. Sometimes if it's a clean break, like they broke it off, but there's times where I've seen injuries and even being in the veterinary field where, like, say somebody accidentally smashed the tail, accidentally like closing cage as they were putting it back in, and it was a lizard species that could drop its tail. Sometimes the damage that's at the end where it broke in the smash, sometimes it won't grow out the same. Sometimes it'll just grow back as a little nub. It just depends on how clean the break is. I don't know if you guys could remember the slide of the leopard gecko that, with the detached tail. See how pink and fleshy that was? It looked like a clean break. That would regenerate nicer than like something that was smashed. So it just depends on how the tail is dropped. If it's by the animal's choice, or if it's smashed, or if it's by predator just really pinches it off. Sometimes they usually break off a little bit further up from where they're grabbed, so it usually grows out okay. But if it's just a smash and that part stays and just the other part falls out, is basically it may not grow back very well, maybe just a little bit.
Got it. Thanks, Miss Izzy. I know we kind of cut out from there.
You guys are fine. So last poll, guys. What is the largest lizard in the planet? Is it going to be the Gila monster, the Komodo dragon, or the leopard gecko?
What do you think, Ben?
Komodo Dragon.
Yeah, I think so too.
What was the first one?
All right, guys, and we are closing down the poll. So I have kind of a mixed bag, although it looks like most people went with the Komodo dragon. What are we thinking, Mr. Miguel?
Sorry, I got muted. The correct answer is the Komodo dragon. The Komodo dragon is the king of the dragons. They get very big. At max size, they get about 7 to 8 feet long. Pretty big. They get at that size, they're about 140 to 200 pounds. So they're a very massive lizard. So they are the biggest.
That's so cool. Yeah, I'm sure that a lot of I think we learned a lot today, all the kids asking all these really awesome questions. I'm trying to find any more that I haven't really answered. So, Mr. Miguel, quick question though. When do you think has Kidspace, are they planning any new kids programming online yet? Is there anything that people can tune into for you guys yet?
Yeah, to stay up to date with all that, because it's been a very much a moving target, as you know, with the spikes and swings that we've had lately. If you go to kidspacemuseum.org, our website, that page will let you know, always keep you up to date on what's going, or you could go to our Instagram at Kidspace.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Mr. Miguel, for joining us today. And I know that we're going to be having a lot of other really cool collaborations in the future. So for everyone that's watching, please stay tuned. And thank you again. And thank you, Izzy, so much for being a part of it as well. And thank you to all my friends, and shout out to all my Hamilton kids that I see that actually showed up.
Before we leave, I have a question.
Oh, okay. I'll give you the one last question. Go ahead, honey.
Could snakes stand water or no?
Do they like water?
I don't know. Could they if they fall in the ocean?
No.
If they fall in the ocean, could they stand that water, or will they
Survive, you mean?
Oh,
yeah,
it depends very much on the type of snake, because there are sea snakes that live totally the whole time they live in the ocean. The only time they come out of the ocean is the females come out to lay eggs, but the rest of the time they live in the ocean. The ball python, unfortunately, would just sink if we threw him in the ocean, because he's big, he's stout, heavy-bodied. He's not a semi-aquatic or an aquatic animal. There's big snakes like anacondas, and other ones that are very much semi-aquatic snakes that would, in the ocean, they would be able to swim. It just depends, how far away from the shore they would be at. But if you threw them out to sea, they would probably drown. But if they were close to the shore, they would manage to find their way back, no problem. It just depends on the species.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Miguel. Thank you so much. It was really good seeing you again. And
Yeah,
bye.
good to meet you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on our next webinar.
Cool. Yeah, and then anyone who has any other questions past this, whatever, they're free to share my info, and I'll do my best to answer any other questions, because I know since we're limited for time, I tried to cram as much into it as I could, so I was kind of rushed at times. But
No, you did a
but I
really
know
great.
people. Yeah, I'm sorry, what?
I said, no, you did a really great job.
Thank
Oh,
you.
okay, cool.
All right.
Thank
In
you.
the wild, do legless lizards hunt in groups, or are they solitary hunters?
They are solitary, just like most lizards, they're solitary. Nice, good question.
Yeah, that was a good question. Yeah, so I see other people asking about signing up for all of our events. You can go to pasadenahumane.org under our kids page, and you can sign up for any of the cool kids programs that are coming up. So thanks again, Miguel, and we'll see you next time.
Oh, you're very welcome. Bye, guys. Have a good weekend.
Have a great
Bye.
Bye, guys.